She was just a poor street vendor, humiliated and framed by the police, until the courtroom revealed she was the billionaire's lost wife, long believed dead. Now, love, lies, and power collide in a battle that could destroy an empire. Rachel's hands trembled as she stacked jars of shrimp paste on the edge of her rickety wooden cart. The morning air was heavy with smog, mixed with the salty tang of the seafood she had woken at dawn to prepare. Around her, the bustling American city pulsed with indifference. Office workers hurried past in polished shoes, mothers tugged impatient children along, and teenagers pointed and laughed at her as if her poverty was a performance staged for their amusement. She kept her head low, her dark hair tied back in a loose braid. The humiliation was a daily ritual. Yet she endured for Lily. Her daughter was only 7, but already her small shoulders carried the weight of shame no child deserved. "Mommy, I'll help," Lily said softly, placing tiny hands on a jar to steady it. Her voice was fragile but hopeful, like sunlight breaking through smoke. Rachel forced a smile. "Thank you, sweetheart. Just stay close, okay?" But fate was merciless. A police siren wailed, slicing through the morning. 2 officers approached, their uniforms crisp, their eyes sharp with suspicion. The crowd hushed. Rachel's chest tightened. She knew this ritual too well. "You there?" one officer barked, pointing at her cart. "These goods are spoiled. You're poisoning people. Do you have a permit?" Rachel shook her head quickly, panic rising. "Officer, please. This is fresh. I prepared it myself this morning. I've never harmed anyone." "Don't lie," the other officer snapped, knocking a jar off the cart. It shattered, splattering the pavement with paste. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Some smirked, others wrinkled their noses in disgust. "Mommy!" Lily cried, trying to push between them, but one officer shoved her back roughly. Rachel's heart cracked at the sight of her daughter stumbling, nearly falling. She caught Lily in her arms, shielding her. "Please," Rachel begged, her voice breaking. "She's just a child. Don't touch her." The officers ignored her. One pulled out a citation pad while the other began to overturn more jars, spilling Rachel's only source of income onto the ground. The smell of shrimp paste filled the air, thick and suffocating. Laughter rippled through the bystanders. Rachel swallowed her tears. She wanted to scream, to fight, but she had learned long ago that resistance only brought more punishment. She had no power, only survival. And yet, amid the humiliation, she felt it. A gaze. Across the street, a black luxury car sat idling. Behind the tinted glass, a pair of piercing blue eyes locked onto her. They were wide, stunned, almost haunted. The man inside clenched his fists, his breath quickening. Eric Whitmore. For years, he had carried the ghost of a woman who had died in fire and smoke. A woman he had loved beyond reason, lost in tragedy. His mother, Grace Whitmore, had told him Rachel perished. Her body never recovered. He had buried her memory, forcing himself into the cold mold of the Whitmore heir, husband to Eliza, father to Adrian. And yet, there she was, the same delicate jawline, the same determined eyes, even under layers of exhaustion, the same trembling, hands clutching a child who could only be their daughter. Eric's pulse roared in his ears, his world tilted on its axis. Was it possible? Had his mother lied? The car door handle twitched under his grip, but he hesitated. Years of control and manipulation echoed in his mind. Grace would destroy anyone who dared defy her. If she had hidden Rachel once, what would she do if Rachel reappeared now, alive, with a child? Rachel. His Rachel. The officers grabbed Rachel's arm roughly, yanking her toward their cruiser. Lily screamed, clutching at her mother's skirt. Rachel stumbled, her knees scraping against the pavement. "No, please, don't take me! I've done nothing wrong!" Rachel cried out, her voice ringing across the street. Eric's chest constricted. Every fiber of him wanted to run to her, to tear the officers away, to hold her and never let go. But the chains of fear still bound him. His mother's power was vast. Judges, police, politicians, all bent to her will. If Rachel were alive, she would be in danger. He pressed a trembling hand against the glass, whispering her name as if the sound could reach her through the chaos. Rachel lifted her head in that moment, her tear-streaked face turning toward the car. Their eyes met, hers wide with shock, his with desperate recognition. It lasted only a heartbeat, but it was enough. Rachel's grip on Lily tightened. She froze, as if struck by lightning. Eric Whitmore, the man she had once loved, the man who had let her burn, was alive, staring back at her. But why now? Why here? And why did his gaze carry not abandonment, but longing? The officers shoved her forward, dragging her toward the waiting car. The crowd whispered, their cruelty sharp and cutting. Lily's cries filled the air, piercing Eric's soul, his jaw clenched. He could no longer sit still. For years, he had lived under lies. For years, he had mourned a ghost. But the truth stood bloody and humiliated on the street before him. And the truth demanded action. As the police siren wailed and the cruiser door slammed shut on Rachel, Eric stepped out of his car. The city had no idea that its most powerful family was about to be ripped open by secrets buried in ash. Rachel sat on the cold, hard bench of the police station, her wrists red from the tight grip of the officer who had dragged her in. Lily clung to her side, trembling and sniffling, her small hand clutching at her mother's sleeve, as if letting go would mean losing her forever. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glare on the cracked linoleum floors. She had been here before, wrongly accused, mocked, fined for crimes she hadn't committed. This time, though, the charge was more serious: selling unsafe food products. If proven, she could lose her cart, her only source of income, and possibly even custody of Lily. Rachel buried her face in her daughter's hair, breathing in the faint scent of soap. "It's going to be okay," she whispered, though she didn't believe it herself. The officer behind the desk typed lazily on his computer, pausing only to sip from a stained coffee mug. He didn't even glance at her, as though she were invisible. To the world, Rachel was no one, just another poor woman fighting for scraps in a city that had no mercy. But to Eric Whitmore, watching from the shadows outside the glass window, she was everything. Eric had followed the police cruiser, his mind a storm of disbelief and memory. Rachel alive, Rachel with a daughter. He could barely breathe under the weight of it. He had dreamed of her face for years, only to wake up to his mother's cold reminder: she is gone. Do not cling to ghosts. And yet the ghost was alive. He clenched his fists. Grace had lied. She must have orchestrated it all. The fire, the story of Rachel's death, the burial of the past. Why? To protect the Whitmore name? To sever him from the woman she deemed unworthy? His jaw tightened. If his mother had gone that far once, what would she do now that Rachel and Lily had resurfaced? Inside, Rachel was handed a court summons. Her case would be heard within the week. Without money for a lawyer, the outcome was almost certain: guilty. Rachel's chest tightened as she skimmed the paper. Prison, fines, or worse, Lily taken by social services. She bit her lip until it bled, her vision blurring. She had fought too hard, sacrificed too much, to let her daughter be taken away. Eric turned away from the window. He had resources, power, and influence. He could make this go away with a single phone call. But if he revealed himself too soon, it could destroy everything. Grace's spies were everywhere. Still, he couldn't stand by and do nothing. The next day, as Rachel prepared for the hearing, she was stunned when a lawyer knocked on the door of her crumbling apartment. "Mrs. Rachel Adams?" he asked, his tone professional yet kind. "My name is Daniel Hayes. I've been assigned to represent you in your upcoming case, pro bono." Rachel froze, clutching Lily's hand. "But I didn't ask for a lawyer. I can't pay. No payment is necessary," Daniel said firmly. "Someone believes you deserve a fair chance. That's all you need to know for now." Rachel's suspicion warred with her gratitude. Who would care enough to send her a lawyer? She had no friends, no allies, only ghosts of the past. The courtroom was crowded on the day of the hearing. Rachel sat at the defendant's table, her head bowed. Lily sat quietly in the back, drawing on a scrap of paper, unaware of how close she was to being taken from her mother. The prosecutor painted Rachel as a reckless vendor endangering public health, waving photos of spilt jars as evidence. The judge's stern gaze never wavered, his gavel tapping impatiently. When it was Daniel's turn, he rose with calm authority. "Your Honor, the charges against my client are baseless. The evidence presented is circumstantial at best. Independent lab tests confirmed that the food was fresh and safe for consumption. Furthermore, eyewitnesses will testify that the officers acted with unnecessary aggression, violating my client's rights. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as two neighbors stepped forward to testify on Rachel's behalf. She blinked in shock. She hadn't even known they were willing to speak for her. The prosecutor fumbled, clearly unprepared. The judge leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting. Very well. Given the evidence and testimony, the charges against the defendant are hereby dismissed. The gavel struck. Rachel sagged in relief, tears streaming down her cheeks. She reached for Lily, pulling her into her arms. For once, justice had been on her side, but her relief was short-lived. As she exited the courthouse, she spotted him, Eric Whitmore. He stood at the far end of the steps, his tailored suit stark against the gray sky, his eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. Memories crashed over her. The fire, the betrayal, the nights she cried out his name in vain. And now, here he was, alive, powerful, watching her with something she couldn't name. Her heart pounded. Why was he here? Why now? Rachel gripped Lily's hand tighter, turning away quickly. She couldn't let him near them. Not now. Not when the wounds still bled. But Eric didn't move. He stood frozen, his world unraveling as he watched the woman he had loved vanish into the crowd once more, clutching the hand of a child who could only be his. And in that moment, he made a silent vow. No matter the cost, he would uncover the truth. The city was heavy with rain that evening. Water streamed down gutters, the streets glistening under neon lights. Rachel hurried home with Lily tucked under her shawl, the child's small feet splashing through puddles. Her shrimp paste cart sat abandoned under a sheet of plastic, soaked by the downpour. She couldn't afford to lose another day's income. But after the ordeal in court, her strength was gone. She thought the nightmare was behind her now that the charges were dismissed. But the sight of Eric Whitmore outside the courthouse lingered like a phantom. His face had been older, sharper, touched by years of wealth and power. But it had been him. The man she once loved, the man who had let her burn. Her heart warred with itself. She wanted to scream at him, to demand why he hadn't saved her. But another part of her, fragile and treacherous, whispered that maybe he hadn't known the truth. Lily tugged at her sleeve. Mommy, someone's following us. Rachel froze. Her eyes darted to the shadows, and there, under the yellow glow of a street lamp, stood Eric. His umbrella shielded him from the rain, but his gaze was exposed, raw and unrelenting. Rachel's pulse quickened. She pulled Lily closer and quickened her pace, but Eric stepped forward. Rachel, he said softly, his voice barely carrying over the rain. The sound of her name on his lips sent shivers through her. She turned sharply, her eyes blazing. Stay away from me. Eric's throat tightened. He wanted to run to her, to fall to his knees and beg forgiveness, but her fury held him in place. You're alive, he whispered, almost to himself. All these years. I thought you were gone. Rachel's laugh was bitter, broken. Gone? That's convenient, isn't it? You believed I was dead because it made your life easier. You didn't come. You didn't search. You let me suffer alone. That's not true, Eric said quickly, his voice trembling. I mourned you every day. My mother told me you died in the fire. There was no body, only ashes. She said, your mother, Rachel spat, venom burning. Her words. Of course. Grace Whitmore. She always despised me, always called me unworthy of you. And now you expect me to believe she lied? That you were innocent all along? Eric stepped closer, lowering his umbrella. The rain plastered his hair against his forehead, but he didn't care. Yes, Rachel. I was blind, but I swear to you, I didn't know. If I had known you survived, if I had known about Lily. His eyes fell on the child clutching Rachel's skirt. She's mine, isn't she? Rachel's heart clenched. Lily stared up at Eric, confusion in her innocent eyes. Who is he, Mommy? Rachel pulled her closer. No one, she said firmly. No one at all. Eric flinched, pain flashing across his face. But before he could speak again, headlights swept across the street. A police car slowed, its siren briefly wailing before cutting off. Two officers stepped out, their flashlights slicing through the rain. "Rachel Adams," one barked. "You're under investigation for fraud. We have a warrant to search your residence." Rachel's blood ran cold. "What? That's impossible. I've done nothing wrong," the officer smirked. "Then you got nothing to hide. Step aside." Eric's instincts flared, recognized the tactic immediately. Fabricated charges, intimidation, harassment. It had his mother's fingerprints, all over it. "You can't do this," Eric snapped, stepping between Rachel and the officers. His voice carried the weight of authority honed from years in boardrooms and courtrooms. "Show me the warrant." The officer hesitated, clearly unsettled by Eric's commanding presence, but his partner shoved a crumpled paper forward. "Signed and sealed. We have every right." Rachel's stomach twisted. She knew the truth. The Whitmores had the power to bend the law. If Grace wanted her destroyed, she would use every weapon. "At her disposal! Eric, don't!" Rachel hissed, tugging at his arm. "They'll only make it worse. Just let them do what they want." But Eric's eyes hardened. Not this time. He snatched the paper from the officer's hand, scanning it. His jaw clenched. "This is forged. Sloppy work. Do you really think you can intimidate her with this garbage?" The officers stiffened, recognizing him now. "Mr. Whitmore," one muttered, his tone shifting. "That's right," Eric said coldly. "And I will personally see to it that this abuse of power is investigated. Leave now!" The officers exchanged uneasy glances before retreating, muttering curses under their breath. The police car pulled away, its red taillights fading into the rain. Rachel stared at Eric, her chest heaving. "What have you done?" "What I should have done years ago," he said quietly. "Protect you." Rachel shook her head, tears mingling with the rain. "You can't protect me, Eric. Not from your mother. She'll never let us live in peace. She'll come after me, after Lily, and she'll use everything, money, power, even the law, to destroy us." Eric stepped closer, his voice fierce. "Then let her come. I won't lose you again, Rachel. I won't lose our daughter." For a long moment they stood there in the rain, torn between past betrayals and the fragile hope of a future. But in the shadows across the street, unseen by either of them, a figure watched from a parked car. A phone clicked shut, a message sent to Grace Whitmore herself. She's alive, and Eric knows. The courthouse smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper, but for Rachel it felt like the scent of fear. Her hands shook as she clutched Lily's small fingers. The child's wide eyes darted nervously around the crowded chamber. Rachel had tried to reassure her that everything would be fine, but her own heart pounded with dread. Across the aisle, Grace Whitmore sat in pristine elegance, her pearl necklace gleaming under the chandelier lights. Her eyes, cold and sharp, never left Rachel. The matriarch's presence was enough to silence whispers around the courtroom. Every lawyer, every clerk, even the judge, seemed to straighten under her gaze. Rachel swallowed hard. She had always known Grace hated her, but she hadn't expected this level of cruelty. To use the law to rip Lily away, it was beyond monstrous. The bailiff called the court to order. The judge entered, robes swishing as he took his seat. "This hearing concerns the petition for custody of minor child Lily Adams," he announced. His eyes flicked toward Rachel with little warmth. Grace's attorney, a tall man with silver hair, rose smoothly. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Grace Whitmore, seeks emergency custody of the child because her mother, Rachel Adams, is unfit to provide a stable and secure environment." Rachel's breath caught. The words echoed like a death sentence. "The attorney continued, his tone dripping with condescension. "Miss Adams resides in a dilapidated apartment. She operates a questionable street business without proper permits. She has a history of police altercations. This child deserves safety, education, and a future, and Mrs. Whitmore can provide all of that." Rachel wanted to scream, but Daniel Hayes, her lawyer, gently placed a hand on her arm, urging her to stay calm. When it was his turn, Daniel stood tall. "Your Honor, my client may not have wealth, but she has something far more important: love, dedication, and resilience. She has raised Lily with nothing but her own hard work. The accusations against her are based on fabricated police reports, and biased accounts, conveniently orchestrated by individuals with deep ties to Mrs. Whitmore's circle. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge's brow furrowed, clearly uncomfortable with the suggestion. "Mr. Hayes, tread carefully. Are you accusing Mrs. Whitmore of corruption?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "I am stating facts, Your Honor." Grace's lips curved into a faint, amused smile. She leaned slightly toward her attorney and whispered something. Moments later, a new witness was called. A police officer strode to the stand, uniform pressed, posture straight. Rachel recognized him instantly, the same man who had overturned her jars on the street. "Officer, tell us what you witnessed," Grace's attorney prompted. The officer's voice was steady. "I personally observed Rachel Adams selling spoiled food products to the public. When questioned, she became defensive and aggressive. I considered her behavior a danger to her child." Rachel shot to her feet, fury in her veins. "That's a lie! You attacked me! You shoved my daughter!" The judge slammed his gavel. "Order! Sit down, Miss Adams, or I will hold you in contempt." Rachel sank back into her chair, trembling. Tears burned her eyes as she looked at Lily, who clung to her tightly. How could the truth be twisted so easily? Grace's attorney smirked, clearly pleased. "Your Honor, you can see the instability for yourself." The judge sighed heavily, his expression grim. "The evidence presented so far does raise concerns. Unless compelling testimony is offered in defense, I may have no choice but to grant temporary custody to Mrs. Whitmore." Rachel's world tilted. Temporary custody meant losing Lily, even if just for a time it could stretch into forever. Her lawyer glanced at her, regret in his eyes. "Rachel, we need something stronger." The judge was about to announce his decision when a commanding voice echoed through the chamber. "Your Honor, if you question the stability of Lily's mother, then perhaps you should also consider the truth of her father." All eyes turned. Eric Whitmore stepped into the courtroom. His presence was electric. Tall, confident, his tailored suit drenched from rushing in through the rain. Gasps filled the chamber as whispers spread like wildfire. Grace's face drained. Of color. "Eric?" the judge said, startled. Eric's gaze locked on Rachel, then dropped to Lily. His voice trembled but carried with conviction. "This child is mine. Lily is my daughter." The room erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashed, and the judge banged his gavel for silence. Grace rose to her feet, her composure cracking for the first time. "Eric, stop this nonsense immediately." But Eric ignored her. He walked to the witness stand, his voice steady as he faced the court. "For years I believed Rachel Adams was dead. I was told she perished in a fire. That was a lie. She survived, and she raised our daughter alone, without help, without protection, while I was deceived." Rachel's breath caught. Hearing the words aloud, "our daughter," sent a rush of emotions crashing through her. The judge rubbed his temples. "Mr. Whitmore, are you prepared to provide proof of this claim?" "Yes," Eric said firmly. "DNA, financial records, whatever you require. But know this, Rachel is not unfit. She is the strongest, most devoted mother I have ever known. And I will fight anyone who dares to take Lily from her, even if that means standing against my own family." Grace's eyes burned with fury, but for once, her power did not silence the room. The tide had shifted. Rachel clutched Lily to her chest, tears spilling freely. For the first time in years, she felt she was no longer fighting alone, but deep. Down, she knew this was only the beginning. Grace Whitmore would never surrender so easily. The courtroom battle had ended in chaos, but Rachel's heart still echoed with Eric's words. Our daughter. For so long she had carried that truth alone, and now he had spoken it aloud before the world. Part of her felt lighter, freed from years of silence. Yet another part trembled, for she knew that Grace Whitmore would not forgive such defiance. She was right. 2 nights later, Rachel was awakened by fists pounding on her apartment door. Lily stirred in fear, clinging to her mother's arm. Rachel's stomach dropped. The sound was too familiar. "Open up! Police!" Before she could move, the door burst open. Officers swarmed inside, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. One grabbed Rachel's wrists, twisting them behind her back. "You're under arrest for fraud and falsification of records," the officer barked. Rachel's voice broke. "What?" That's impossible. I haven't done anything." Her protests were drowned by Lily's screams as another officer pulled the child aside. Rachel thrashed in desperation. "Don't you touch her! Please! She's my daughter!" But it was no use. The cuffs clicked shut. Lily's sobs echoed as Rachel was dragged out of the apartment into the waiting police van. Neighbors peeked through cracked doors, whispering, shaking their heads. To them, she was just trouble, a poor woman who brought chaos wherever she went. Rachel's tears streamed freely. It wasn't her reputation or her freedom she feared losing, it was Lily. Meanwhile, in the vast Whitmore mansion, Grace sipped tea with a calm smile. The evening news replayed the footage of Rachel being led away in handcuffs. Eliza stood frozen before the screen. She had been restless for days, haunted by the whispers of her husband's sudden absences, the rumors swirling after the courtroom, declaration. And now here was the truth. Eric's dead wife alive, holding a child that looked hauntingly like him. "Eliza," Grace said smoothly, breaking her silence. "I warned him not to chase ghosts. Yet here we are. The woman has returned, dragging filth and scandal with her. And Eric, fool that he is, has been ensnared again." Eliza's chest tightened. Her marriage had not been built on passion, but on duty, on family image. She had loved Eric in her own way, quietly, steadfastly, raising Adrian with him. And yet, she had always sensed his heart was elsewhere, locked in some memory he never shared. Now she knew where. Grace's voice dripped with venom. "Do not pity Rachel Adams. She is a manipulator, unworthy of Eric, unworthy of this family. I will erase her once and for all." But Eliza's gaze remained fixed on the trembling image of Rachel shielding Lily, screaming as officers tore her away. Something inside her ached, a deep human ache. She thought of Adrian, of what it would mean to be ripped from his side. Grace continued, oblivious to Eliza's turmoil. "Eric will learn. He belongs here, with you, with us, not with a street vendor and her brat." Eliza clenched her fists at her sides. She said nothing, but the first seeds of doubt began to take root. At the police station, Rachel sat alone in a holding cell, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead. Her face was pale, her body trembling. She didn't know where Lily was. Every second without her daughter was agony. The clank of heavy doors opening drew her gaze upward. Eric stormed in, his presence fierce and unrelenting. His lawyer, Daniel Hayes, followed close behind. "What happened?" Eric demanded the officer on duty. "Why is she here?" "Fraud charges," the officer muttered, shuffling papers. "Forged! Permits for her business." Eric's jaw tightened. "Nonsense! Release her immediately!" The officer hesitated. "I can't, sir. Orders came from higher up." "Higher up?" Eric snapped. "Don't insult me. We both know exactly where those orders came from." His voice cracked like a whip. The officer faltered, sweat beading on his forehead. Within minutes, paperwork was pushed through, and Rachel was released into Eric's arms. But she didn't. Embrace him! Her eyes burned with tears of rage. "This is what being near you brings me. Humiliation, prison, danger for my daughter. Why won't you just leave us alone, Eric? Why now?" Eric's heart clenched. He reached for her, but she stepped back. "I didn't come back into your life by choice, Rachel," he said quietly. "Fate brought me back. But now that I know the truth, I can't walk away. I won't. Not from you. Not from Lily." Her resolve faltered for a moment, but fear overpowered it. "Your mother will never stop," she whispered. "She'll ruin me, she'll take Lily, and she'll destroy you too." Eric's eyes darkened with determination. "Then let her try. She has ruled my life for too long. No more." For the first time, Rachel saw not just the heir molded by Grace's control, but the man she had once loved, the man who had fought against the world for her long ago. Elsewhere, Eliza sat alone in her bedroom, pale and weak. The doctors, words echoed in her mind. Advanced ovarian cancer. She had hidden it for months, burying the truth beneath forced smiles. Her hands trembled as she unfolded a piece of stationery. She began to write, her pen scratching across the page. "My dearest Eric, by the time you read this, I may no longer have the strength to speak. I know where your heart lies, and it was never with me. I don't hate you for it. I only ask one thing. Protect our son, Adrian. And if Rachel and her child are truly your family, then love them fully, without fear. Don't let your mother's cruelty steal what time you still have. Tears blurred her vision, but she kept writing. The truth, once buried, would soon be her final gift. And across the city, Grace Whitmore received another call. The charges didn't hold, her informant muttered. Eric intervened. Grace's eyes narrowed, her voice icy. Then we escalate. If Rachel won't vanish quietly, I will bury her in a storm of scandals so deep no court will ever free her again. Her glass of wine caught the chandelier's light as she raised it to her lips. This war has only just begun. The city buzzed with whispers. The billionaire's lost wife, the secret daughter, the arrests. Each headline grew more sensational, painting Rachel as both a fraud and a tragedy. Grace's influence flowed through the veins of every newspaper and broadcast, twisting the story until Rachel seemed a criminal rather than a mother. Rachel tried to hold herself together for Lily, but every step outside felt like walking through a storm of eyes and whispers. She couldn't even sell shrimp paste anymore. Her stall was vandalized twice, and her neighbors avoided her like she carried a curse. Eric visited often, promising protection, promising he would fix everything. But Rachel saw the shadows under his eyes, the pressure mounting against him. His company's stock wavered, board members whispered about scandals, and Grace tightened her grip on every weakness. And then came the summons. Rachel Adams versus the people. Charges of fraud, endangerment, and falsification would be heard in the highest court. It wasn't just about Rachel anymore. It was about breaking her once and for all. The courtroom brimmed with tension. Reporters packed the benches, their pens ready to record every gasp, every tear. Grace sat like a queen in the front row, her pearl necklace gleaming, her eyes daring anyone to defy her. Rachel stood at the defendant's table, trembling but unbroken, Daniel Hayes by her side. Eric sat just behind her, his presence steady, a silent vow of loyalty. The judge called for order. Testimonies began. Witnesses appeared. Businessmen claiming Rachel forged documents, vendors swearing she lied to customers, even neighbors who accused her of fraud. Every word dripped with Grace's fingerprints. Rachel clenched her fists, her nails biting her palms. She wanted to scream the truth, but the walls felt stacked against her. Then came the most brutal moment. A child welfare officer stepped forward, armed with papers. Based on current circumstances, she declared, we recommend Rachel Adams's daughter be placed in temporary protective custody. The world froze. Rachel's knees buckled. No, you can't take her. She's all I have. The officer didn't flinch. It is for the child's safety. Lily, seated in the back, began to cry, reaching for her mother. Rachel strained, against Daniel's grip, desperate to run to her. Her cries echoed through the courtroom, raw and unbearable. Grace smiled faintly, satisfied. But then, a new figure rose. Eliza Whitmore. She looked frail, her skin pale as ivory, but her eyes shone with fire. Slowly, she approached the witness stand. The murmurs in the room grew louder. Why was the billionaire's current wife testifying? The judge allowed it. Eliza took the oath with trembling hands, then fixed her gaze on Grace. My mother-in-law, she began softly, is lying. Gasps filled the room. Grace's eyes widened, her control cracking. Eliza continued, her voice gathering strength. For years, I knew Eric was haunted by a love he lost. I thought she had died. We all did. But when Rachel returned, I understood. Something that Grace had tried to bury. Rachel was his wife. She is the mother of his child, and every accusation against her is a fabrication orchestrated to destroy her. Grace shot to her feet. How dare you? Sit down! But Eliza didn't falter. She reached into her purse, pulling out folded letters. Letters Grace had once sent to cover the fire, the lies, the disappearance. Eliza laid them before the court. These are proof of what was done to separate them. Lies, forged by Grace herself. Rachel is no fraud. She is the victim, the judge demanded. Silence as the room erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashed. Rachel's breath caught in her chest. She had expected Eliza's hatred, her scorn, but not this. Eliza turned to her, her eyes shimmering with tears. I was Eric's wife in name, but you were his heart. I won't leave this world without speaking the truth. Rachel's lips trembled. For the first time, someone other than Eric fought for her. Grace tried to recover, her voice sharp as steel. You are weak, Eliza. You let love cloud your judgment. These papers mean nothing. But the tide had shifted. Judges, lawyers, and spectators alike leaned toward Rachel now, toward the story of injustice that had been buried for years. Grace's aura of invincibility cracked piece by piece. Rachel finally rose, her voice clear despite the tremor in it. I have lived in poverty, in humiliation, in fear. All I wanted was to protect my daughter. But today I refuse to cower anymore. You can strip me of money, reputation, even freedom, but you will not take Lily, not while I breathe. Her words carried through the chamber, raw and unfiltered. For the first time, the court listened not to a defendant, but to a mother. As the session adjourned for deliberation, Eric caught Rachel's hand. His grip was firm, unwavering. We're almost there, he whispered, but Rachel's eyes flickered, with unease. The battle wasn't over. Grace was too dangerous to accept defeat. She would strike harder, more viciously, before letting go. Across the courtroom, Grace sat frozen, her face pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. The storm she had unleashed was spiraling out of her control, and Eliza, frail yet standing tall, looked directly at her, unafraid. This war ends with me, Eliza whispered under her breath, her words carried only by the silence in her heart. The courthouse emptied, but shadows lingered. Rachel knew the verdict would change everything. Victory could mean freedom, but defeat would cost her Lily forever. Outside, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing like lightning. Somewhere in the chaos, a black car waited with tinted windows, its engine purring softly. Grace's final move was already in motion. The war was no longer just in the courtroom. It was everywhere. The final day of trial arrived with the weight of destiny. The courthouse steps were swarmed with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning as Rachel walked inside. Eric was at her side, Lily holding her hand tightly, her small fingers trembling. Inside, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Grace. Whitmore sat front and center, her eyes burning with icy rage. She had lost ground after Eliza's testimony, but her influence still reached deep. She wasn't here to surrender. She was here to crush. The judge struck the gavel. Court is in session. The prosecution wasted no time painting Rachel as a fraud who deceived the public and endangered her child. They waved documents, testimonies, and accusations like weapons. Rachel's chest tightened with every word. She had faced humiliation before, but this was different. Her motherhood, her very right to stand beside Lily, was under attack. Then Daniel Hayes, Eric's lawyer, stood. Calmly, he placed Eliza's letters on the evidence table. These are written confessions, proving Grace Whitmore orchestrated lies to erase Rachel Adams from Eric Whitmore's life. She staged her death, forced her into poverty, and fabricated. Every charge we see today, gasps rippled through the courtroom. All eyes turned to Grace, and then Eliza, frail, pale but unbroken, was escorted in. She stood at the witness stand, her voice steady despite weakness. My time is short, she said, but I will not leave this world in silence. Rachel is innocent. Grace manipulated everything to destroy her. Eric never stopped loving her, and I will not let Grace tear apart their daughter too. Grace shot to her feet, fury spilling. Lies! You betray this family for her! You shame your own son! But the judge silenced her with the gavel. The cracks in her power were showing. During a recess, Rachel sat with Lily in her arms, whispering, promises she barely believed. Eric knelt before them, his hand covering hers. No matter the verdict, he said firmly, I won't let them take you away. Not again, Rachel's lips quivered. Your mother will never stop, Eric. She'll ruin us all. Eric's jaw hardened. Then let her try. She's ruled me for the last time. When the judge returned, silence filled the chamber. On the charges of fraud, falsification, and endangerment, his voice thundered. This court finds Rachel Adams not guilty. The room exploded with gasps and cheers. Rachel collapsed into tears, clutching Lily. Eric wrapped them both in his arms, his own eyes wet. Grace's face turned pale as marble. For the first time, her control was gone. As the courtroom cleared, Grace confronted Eric. Her voice was sharp, trembling with fury. You think this is a victory? You've disgraced the Whitmore name. You're no son of mine. Eric faced her squarely. Then I'll carry another name. Because if being your son means living under chains, I'd rather be free. Her lips pressed tight, but she didn't reply. She turned sharply and walked away, her empire of fear shattering behind her. In the weeks that followed, Rachel's name was restored. Her story spread, no longer a scandal but a tale of survival. She was no longer the humiliated shrimp vendor, but the woman who defied lies and reclaimed her dignity. Eric stood by her side openly now, holding her hand in front of the cameras, introducing Lily proudly as his daughter. At Eliza's funeral, grief filled the air. Her final letter was read aloud, blessing Rachel and Eric's reunion and urging Eric to be a father to Adrian as well as Lily. Adrian wept quietly, and Rachel embraced him like her own. One evening, as twilight settled over, the city, Rachel, Eric, Lily, and Adrian sat on a park bench. The children laughed, chasing each other through the grass. Eric slipped his hand into Rachel's. We've lost years, but we still have today. That's enough for me. Rachel smiled through tears. I thought love had died in that fire, but it lived, even in ashes. He kissed her hand gently, and now it burns brighter than ever. Rachel watched the children, her heart swelling. After years of humiliation, fear, and trials, she had found peace, not in wealth, but in love. She whispered to herself, a vow to the night air. No more hiding, no more fear. This is our life now, and no one will ever take it from us again. For the first time in years, she believed it. If you enjoy these stories, make sure to subscribe to Black Battlers so you never miss the next one. Your subscription gives us the power to bring you even more emotional and inspiring stories. Join the Black Battlers family today.